Are we working? Please tell me there's no reverberation on the internet. We'll find out in a second. So while we do, I'm just going to do the introduction. Welcome to the March ASV AstroTalk. This year is the ASV's 100th anniversary, and we have a lot of things planned, including some quite amazing AstroTalks. Tonight we bring you a virtual tour of the Melbourne Observatory that we filmed earlier this evening. We'll also give you a short history of the ASV from Bob Crosswaite, who's hiding in the wings. But before we begin, I would like to say that in the spirit of reconciliation, the Astronomical Society of Victoria acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. And we pay our respect to the elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Tonight's stream is brought to you by Optic Central, who are the sponsors of our prize, our big door prize for the Messier Star Party, which is hiding over there. We'll show you later on. Those watching us on Facebook, you can donate stars. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can donate stickers. If you're watching us here in the room, you can give Chris some money. Whatever works, whatever's easiest. And if you don't follow us on Facebook or YouTube, you should. But before we begin, the first thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to do Sky for the Night first. We're going backwards this time. We're going to give Ken his chance to do Sky for the Night. But before Ken comes up, I'll have to pass it over to our president, Mr. Chris Rudge, to say a few words.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening all, and welcome to a face-to-face meeting. Isn't it great? The face-to-face meetings are gradually coming back, and I hope to run the first junior meeting on Friday face-to-face, the first one for 2 odd years. So that will be quite something. And appropriately enough, we're going to be talking about dark matter. And having talked to a couple of physicists about it, they say that I can say almost anything I like and nobody can disprove it. So that's rather a good situation to be in. Now we're coming up to our Messier Star Party and our grand opening of the new AAO, the All Abilities Observatory, and things are underway for that. We have the roof finally going on, and I went out to see the telescope the other day out at Sidereal Trading, and that looks really good. We had the gentleman out there, who's Jesse Stout, who's going to open it for us, and he was absolutely blown away as someone with very limited mobility that he can actually look through a telescope and not ruin his back for the next week. So, yes, our All Abilities Observatory is going to have a good number of people using it. For us who are getting older, we won't have to climb steps in the middle of the night. For those who are younger, you won't have to climb steps in the middle of the night either. So it makes it safer for a lot of people. The amount of work that's gone up there is absolutely amazing. And thank you to many people. It has been a great team effort. Mark, Gavin, Diego, Barry Adcock, Mark Justice, and many others. If I missed your name out, I'm sorry, it wasn't done deliberately. So, I guess without further ado, we'll hand over to Ken and eventually to Bob. So thank you, Ken.
Thank you. So we're doing this back to front, so is this going to work? Okay. Just find stellarium. Cool. All good to go. So tonight, because of this Messier Star Party, our theme is going to be the Messier objects in the sky. But I just want to emphasise that getting up to star parties is sometimes one of the few chances per year, and for people to get out under a dark sky. And it just, this month, I'm just working part-time now, so I'm actually getting back into playing the piano. And I picked up my little notebook from when I was nine through to about 13 years old. And my piano teacher had written down that this week I was playing Country Gardens. It's a really simple little piece you play on the piano. But once you learn it, you move on and you never play it again. So the last time I probably played this was 1972. And I sort of remembered the tune in my head, and I just played some of the top notes, and then the fingers remembered that when the fourth finger went here, the second finger went there, and in 15 minutes I'd played that piece. And I don't have that music book anymore, it was just out of my head. So the lesson out of that is, even if you haven't looked at the sky for a while, you will get out under the night sky and very quickly start remembering some constellations and start remembering some bright stars. And with the number of people that have their own telescopes, you'll start getting familiar with the night sky, even if you haven't been out under a night sky for a year or two. And so, piano lessons. I'm going to have another story next month on a piano thing. Anyway, Charles Messier. The Messier objects are named after Charles Messier and the objects he was hunting in the sky. And he was a comet hunter, because if you could find comets in the sky, they were very much on trend in the 1670s. So if you lived in the 70s and you're feeling old now, well, Charles Messier was 1670s. So he found favour by finding comets. And he kept coming across these really annoying things in the sky that looked like comets, but they weren't comets. So he thought, well, I'm going to make a list of these really annoying objects and tell everyone, don't bother looking at these objects because they're not comets. Now, he was in France, observatory in Paris, France, and you can still go to that observatory today, although when I was in France, it was closed for renovations and it was all just hoarding and couldn't get in. Bit disappointing. But he could only see down south to about the bottom of the scorpion's tail, so in Scorpius. All that southern part of the sky that we can see, which is the Southern Cross, which you can see, he was never able to see these objects from probably the top of the screen down. And there are so many wonderful objects. So we'll end with a few objects in the southern part of the sky to have a look at as well. So Charles Messier, he only had a smallish telescope that had about the light capturing power of an average telescope that us amateurs would use. So because he made this wonderful list of objects that he could see with a small telescope, it turns out that when you're learning to navigate yourself around the sky, going out and looking for these objects, they're all visible in a small amateur 6 or 8 inch telescope. Maybe a 10 on some of the more difficult ones. There are a few that are below our northern horizon that we can't see. So out of the list of 110 objects, I think Perry Vlahos worked out that 100 of them rise above our northern horizon and are visible, but there are probably about 10 or 12 that are really low to our northern horizon, and some are very difficult to see. So people in the past have gone up to the Vic South Star Party, that's a bit further north, and Perry set up the challenge to do the Messier 100 list to see all 100 of these. They also used to do a trip up to Mildura once a year, probably 20 years ago. Perry could tell us when, to get a view of, I think it was M76, which is the lowest one in our sky, and that was getting about the width of your fingernail, or the width of your finger, or maybe 2 fingers above the horizon from Mildura. So it would be up for half an hour, 1 hour, and very hard to see. But people have seen it from Vic South, is my understanding. And also the little mountain right on the road before you get to the Leon Mount, Mount Ida, thank you. Some people have been up there to see it, but my understanding now is some of those trees are getting tall and maybe it's not visible anymore. Does anyone know? Anyone in the crowd? Yes? Still visible. Ah, thank you, Perry. Thank you, Perry. Still visible. Very good.
Very low, yeah, it's about 1.5 degrees above the horizon.
Oh, 1.5, so it probably is 1 finger above the horizon. Yeah. And the other thing you're fighting there is atmospheric extinction. So it may be 1.5 degrees, but if there's a lot of dust in the atmosphere, it would dim that ferociously and make it really, really difficult to see. So here's our night sky. Can I get rid of this little window? Fantastic. So let's move forward in space-time. So we're looking south. We've got our Southern Cross up here. Have our Southern Cross and our 2 pointers. But as I said, there are no Messier objects in this part of the sky. So, very first thing, we will be wanting to look east. Now there are a couple, west. There are a couple of objects in the west. I'm just going to play with my options, and this is a little tip if you're out doing Messier object hunting. You can come in here and play with the options to only show the Messier objects. So M is your Messier objects, and if you ramp this, come on, if you ramp the slider, yes, thank you. If you ramp that up a bit, it will help them stand out a little bit. But you do still have to zoom in. Now, there are a couple of really low ones. So you've got the Pleiades here. The other thing we will do is get rid of the moon by going forward to the date of the Messier star party, which I think is the 26th. And now you can see, if you're really on the hunt to get as many Messiers as you can, as soon as it's dark, you are going to want to look for the Pleiades, because they're 3 and a bit degrees above the horizon. And I think over here in Cetus, behind our tree, there is M77. Oh, yeah. We can turn our horizons off if we need to. M77 is a galaxy. It says magnitude 8, but it's probably more because it's going to be down in the murk. So this is where they put reduced to 9.61, because that is going to be a toughie. Because I know we have trees on our western horizon, so you may need a gap, but it's very unlikely that you're going to get that. You may get Pleiades, and I would suggest binoculars, especially if you have a Dobsonian that sits right down low on the ground. Maybe stand on a ladder, have someone hold the ladder and get the binoculars out. But there, if you're looking to chase every possible challenge, they would be my first two. Now we have, here's another option to set. They put these crazy names in Stellarium, and I'm not sure where the origin of these names. So you might want to go into Deep Sky Objects and you say use designations for the screen labels as well. And now it will make a whole lot more sense because you have the Messier numbers in front of you. So this would be the next group in the north that I would attack, because if we turn on the equatorial grid, we'll see that these, north is where they're highest, heading towards the west. They're already going to be down in the trees of Heathcote, 9, 12, 15 and 24. So where this is Gemini, and we can tell it's Gemini because we have Castor and Pollux here. So this is Castor and this is Pollux, and they make up this square of stars. This square is the shape of Castor and Pollux. So I'm flicking around all the options just to try to help you understand. And I know a lot of people don't like putting the lines on, but I'll put them on for a little bit. There's your twins, Castor and Pollux. It's a handy tool if you're sort of in your first year or two of learning the night sky, but don't get used to this, because when you get out under the night sky, those lines are not there. But Castor and Pollux, there's no real bright stars around, so they do stick out in the north as fairly bright stars. Not bright like Sirius and Betelgeuse, but reasonably bright magnitude 1 and 2 stars that you can use for your navigation. So if we've got up here Orion, and that's the very well known shopping trolley type shape, the saucepan shape. You've got Betelgeuse here, and off to the right, these two stars stick out. And if you come directly across in a line from the horizon with your binoculars, so if we turn on our Telrad finder, this Telrad finder is handy because it's about the size of view you would get through your finder scope. It's about 4 or 5 degrees. So you can just come across, but I look for these 3 stars and then drop down from the end one. So you find Castor and Pollux in the north. I come across, these are still reasonably bright, especially when you're at a dark sky. So magnitude 3 star, magnitude 4 star may be faint from the suburbs, but up at Heathcote they're quite bright. And then you can drop down, and once you're on there, M35 is going to be right at the edge of your field of view in your finder scope. So if you just drop down a little bit, this little globular cluster, M35, is going to pop into view. You won't see it naked eye, but it'll pop up into view, and you can centre it into your finder scope and then get the telescope on there. And then you're going to see a nice little globular cluster. And it's got a little buddy next door. So they sometimes call this the double cluster. And then it's got friends. So M35 and M37 are nice little open clusters. And they're probably the brighter two out of these four. M36, M38 are getting down low to the horizon. So what are we, 8 and 11 degrees? So they're going to be getting low, and this is still 9 o'clock, so it's not properly dark yet. Despite what stellarium is showing us, it's not properly dark. So these are your next challenge. Go for, sorry, I have to keep turning this thing on and off. Go for M35, 37, 36, 38. And if you're planning to go to the Messier star party, now is the time to fire up stellarium or sky safari or starry night, whatever app it is, or if you're traditional, break out your star atlases and start making some little notes and little list of objects to go out and look at. Now, we never know what the weather might be, so it'd be really good to make a list of 20 spread across different parts of the sky. So if we get up to our dark sky site and the whole north is clouded out but the rest is clear, then you've got some different objects around different parts of the skies that you can chase. But hopefully, we're going to have a beautifully clear night. Have you arranged that, Chris? You've spoken to Miss Jane, arranged that? Now, while we're in this part of the sky, we have the bright star Aldebaran. So if you're looking out to the northwest, it is going to be the nice bright orange star that's in the northwest. And it's fairly low again because it's already setting. Its highest point would have been here, right above north. So it's heading for this tree. Watch out. And this is Taurus the Bull. And going down here are the horns of the bull, going down this way and coming out this way. And these are the horns of the bull. And as we get in, oh, no, I've got it wrong, sorry. Because it tips as it heads towards the horizon. The horns of the bull are out here and out here. Yell out if I get it wrong, Perry. All help is appreciated. And this is Messier 1. Now, when I first read about the Messier challenge, I was living at home in outer eastern suburbs, and I thought, oh, I'll start with Messier 1. And I must say it was a very disappointing object. We're living in the suburbs, it's hard to find, and when you see it, it's just a little grey smudge. But do persevere. Don't look at Messier 1 and say, oh, if they're all going to look like this, I'm not going to bother, because there are much, much better ones, such as the 4 we've just talked about, M35, 37, 38, etc. M1 is the Crab Nebula, and if you want to see it in its glory, do get to the bigger scopes on the field. So we've got the 25-inch, we've got the 40-inch, and listen out for what they're looking at. I don't know if Paul is here tonight, if this is on the list of objects to look at. It may be a bit low for those scopes, but you're going to get a better view in a 16-inch and bigger. We also have the 18, don't we? Yes. And you will start to see a little bit of structure in the bigger scopes. So M1's get in there, find it, get it off your list, but you need to follow the horns and look for the star-hopping stars to work your way down. Everybody does their star hop a little bit different. I come off this star and I like to come down here to this group of 3 and I jump across to this one. Yeah, what's our... So I come across here and then I jump into M1. But everyone does their star hops a little bit different. But let's just turn on our telrads and see. So from the dark sky site, you may be able to see it within your finder scope. If you've got this on the edge, it may be visible. Sometimes you got to get a bit closer because M1 is a bit of a tricky one compared to some of the others. So that's sort of all the ones in danger that disappear quickly out of the way, and we continue across the north and we come out to M44, the beehive. M44, the beehive, is one of the really close clusters to us, as is the Pleiades, and it's spread over a nice wide area. So when we zoom in here, we see a very spread out cluster, and they call it the beehive is because it looks like a bunch of little bees just buzzing around, and they're all sort of spread out, not like some of these nice compact globular clusters. This is quite different, and one of the whinges you hear from people going through the Messier challenge is not another open cluster that I'm going to look at and it's going to look the same as all the others. Well, there are subtle differences, and you've got to concentrate on the challenge of finding these things and just paying a little bit of attention. So to some of these stars, you look for different colours in the clusters, and they do have different densities, and some are really dense in the centre and sort of slowly go out. Some will have a big, large centre and a very short edges. And they're all a little bit unique, but yeah, I can't really refute that there are a lot of globular clusters in the Messier 100. So this is fairly bright, easily seen in binoculars. And then up above and to the right, so we're still going across the northern part of the sky, but we're starting to get up a bit higher because we've got our lower ones out of the way. And we've got M67. Now these are these stellarium names, and I don't hear people using these names that are in stellarium. Does anyone know?
Some of
Origin?
us use Pac-Man.
Sorry?
Some of us use Pac-Man.
Yeah, I've heard King Cobra, but Golden Eye cluster? Or Pac-Man cluster? Maybe the kids put that one in. Anyway, it's interesting. But this is a much fainter cluster, magnitude 7. Certainly visible in your binoculars, but from home, if you're doing a bit of practice from home, it's going to be a little bit harder to find. And it is good to go out and hunt down some of these things from home, because we've got a few weeks until the Messier. Because I've found from experience that if you only have a look through the telescope when you get up to Heathcote, you spend a lot more of your time hunting around trying to find objects. Now, when you look at them from home, sure, you're in the suburbs, sure, there's some light pollution, and you don't get that wow sort of view. But if you do a bit of hunting from home, it gets you used to some star hopping, and it can sometimes be a little bit easier because a lot of these faint stars aren't here. So if you were looking in the suburbs, you might only see these brightest stars around in your binoculars when you're hunting for these objects. Whereas when you get up to Heathcote, you're going to see all of these stars. And of course, as we know, all of these programs and charts, they only select certain stars to draw. So sometimes when you're looking through the scope, you are seeing stars that are not on any charts, and it can be a little bit confusing. And, you know, this is the real sky. This is why we get out and look at the sky. This is why we go walking down a nature trail to find all those things. It's not just the waterfall at the end that's in the brochure. There's all sorts of things along the way to look at. So it's kind of fun. The universe is the biggest nature park that we know of, and it's there for free for everyone to go have a look. Okay, so let's have a look overhead. So hang on. I think we'll go up to Orion first, because that also is on the way down. Now, Orion's a bit higher up. And there's a few things around Orion. Now, there was a book come out called Sky Watching, which is one of these books that had David Levy's name to it, and he'd done a nice introduction and wrote a few pieces through it. And it was a star atlas, and it had all sorts of other information, how to use your telescope, binoculars, use a camera, a general all-round book. And I think the first two editions were like most star atlases. They provided a map of every constellation, so all 88 constellations. And that's something that's very familiar to all of us. But the third edition, it was either the third or the fourth, I was in a bookshop and I saw a new edition, had a totally new cover, and I opened it up and I thought, oh, I'm in a hurry here, I'm just going to buy it, take it home, because of course the wife is waiting, she's got the ice cream in the shopping trolley, you've got to go. So I grabbed it, I went, and I got it home, and lo and behold, the first thing I noticed is it doesn't have all 88 constellations. I think, what is this rubbish? I've been ripped off. However, that was just the first reaction. That's like going to the car yard and they tell you the price of the car. And you go, oh, and they call that sticker shock. Too much, I'm never going to buy that. But then the salesman starts to massage you down, calm you down, and you buy the car. And the book was the same. What they done is they took areas of the sky and done tours. So when it got to Orion, they said that it was the Orion area. So they talked about the area. And so it had a range of tours of different parts of the night sky, and it didn't take you just through one location, one constellation. It took you around a group of objects. And it's a really interesting approach, because instead of just having a constellation and here are the usual suspects, in that constellation. It got into some different objects that you normally don't see written up, because the book would write each object up and tell you a little bit of history and tell you what it was all about. So they would treat Orion and the objects around it as a group. And it's an interesting way to approach your observing too. So there's a group of things around here. So the most obvious one here, of course, is M42, the Great Orion Nebula. Very famous in photographs all around the world. I think this would be on the list of most astrophotographers to go and take a photograph and compare it and talk about it with all the other astrophotographers. What do I need to tweak to make it better? Because it's just an iconic object. Really is fabulous. And once you start looking through the big scopes, you start to see a little hints of green and maybe other colours. But it's something equally you can see in a simple 6 or 8 inch Dobsonian telescope. You can see it in binoculars, but a bit of magnification brings out its true magnificence. M43 and the little running man here next door, and it's supposed to be, because this little shape in here looks like a man going out for a run. So this is his head, I think, and his legs going down here, and he's got an arm coming out here. But I think you've got to use a bit of your imagination. Now the horse head is not a Messier object because he just didn't have the scope to see that, but he did find this little object, M78, and this is one where I have heard people say this is Casper the Friendly Ghost. But it is very white and ghostly looking. Looks nothing like this picture in a telescope. But when you see it in the telescope, you can understand why some people might want to call it Casper the Friendly Ghost, because it has that little sort of grey haze with a little hood for a head, but again, there's a bit of imagination required, which is some of the fun. Now, going up above Orion, you've got these bright stars that make up the rabbit, which Orion is hunting. So this is Lupus the hare. And two of the brightest stars that make up Lupus the hare are your little guide stars behind this little cluster called M79. So if I turn this guy on, we can use these 3 stars to draw a line. I actually only use these 2 because it's more of a direct line, and it's one of these ones that's about the same distance again to get to M79. Nice little cluster. Open cluster again. Nice little thing to look at. You can see that the pictures aren't great in Stellarium because this is freeware, and some of the other apps that you get do have better pictures because sometimes you pay the money, so you get better pictures. Nice little cluster to have a look at. So let's now go up towards the centre of the sky. Looking for Sirius and our dog. And you can see there's a nice little group. And this is another follows the idea that rather than just talk about Sirius the dog in here, so here's the back of the dog, the back leg, the front leg, and the tail sticking out behind. So this is the idea that there's a nice little group of Messier objects in here, and you can treat this as another little tour. M41 is a good one to start with because it's nice and bright and it's right near Sirius. So it's really easy to find because it's just so close, and it sort of makes a weird non-equilateral triangle. This is a nice spread out one. Looks really, really nice. It's got a couple of coloured stars in there, and it's sort of more like legs coming out from a little beast. It is quite bright compared to the others, but very spread out. So it's not a dense core. That's probably the easiest one to find in this area. If we use the back legs of the dog, we can run a line across to M46 and 47, and you can if it's a long haul, but you can get across to M48. Can be a bit confusing, but if we look at the big picture, look at the big picture. You've got this lovely triangle, Betelgeuse, Sirius, and Procyon. This is really large on the sky, and they're all bright stars. So when you're trying to find these out, maybe just back off a bit and look at this triangle to help you zone in of how far you've come across the sky to find some of these objects. So I tend to go in here first, and these are two little open clusters again, 46, 47. And 46 has a special little gift in it, in that inside the cluster, from our point of view, probably don't know where it is in real space, we have a tiny little planetary nebula. And you can see this as a nice little fuzzball in amongst the stars of the cluster. So that's really nice to... Sometimes you've got to sit there looking through the eyepiece, making sure you're dark adapted. And then it's a short jump across to M47, which is also a nice little cluster. But you can see the differences between them. So there's a few around here. It's a long haul out to M48. But going back towards the tail of the dog, what happened? M93. M50 is a little bit harder, but I use this triangle because if we come down this edge of the triangle, it's about 1/3 of the way from Sirius to Procyon, and that's how I find it, because there's not a lot of bright stars around it, and I just find that the easiest method. Just run the binoculars down here until you come across the fuzzy spot. Everyone's a little bit different. Okay, how are we going for time, Mark? You ready to move on? Oh, okay. Okay. We've had a lot of fun. We'll call it quits for tonight. I was going to talk about some southern stuff, but they were some non-Messier objects. We'll
what we
leave it
can
at
do?
that.
We can record some southern stuff to put up on YouTube, you and I through StreamYard if you want,
Yeah,
between
sure.
now and the Messier Star Party.
Yeah,
That would be a good one.
yeah, cool.
Let's do that.
Thank you. Sorry to ramble.
It's all right.
Told me to go long.
I did.
I did.
It's all good. We might get
Cool.
the lights on at the moment because the speaker of the night is, I'm not sure if he's asleep yet. Are you awake, Bob? No, he's not. He's telling me he's not awake. Bob's ready to come out and tell us a little bit about the history of the ASV. I've seen this talk before, and it's a pretty cool one. And he's dressed up, he's in character. Have you got your mic on?
I think so.
He has. Come on out, Bob. The floor is yours.
Well, welcome to the AstroTalk. And my part in is to give you a unofficial short history of the formation of the ASV. Now, I suppose you're wondering why it's me that's been asked to do it. Well, I'll tell you. The organisers came to me and said, look, we're looking for someone who was born roughly in 1922 and was still upright and warm. And that I fitted some of that description. And I said, look, I've got no idea of the history of the formation of the ASV. And they said, don't worry about that. With age comes wisdom. And I said, yes, with age comes wisdom, but also comes with loss of memory, baldness, unsightly nasal hair, and incontinence. And they said, well, if you're only worried about incontinence, just make it short, make it quick. So that's how I ended up here tonight. And my wardrobe seemed to fit the 1922s. Alongside me here are some slides, or glass slides, and a projector. And I'll refer to this a little bit later on. But my friend over here, Mark, will maybe talk about this or show you this later on. And it does, through these slides, you can see galaxies, nebula, globular clusters, just as our forebears saw it 90 years ago. Amazing, historical, astronomical, fantastical. Now, I wonder, well, tonight, as I said, we're going to get a Reader's Digest version of the ASV's formation. What I'd like to do now, and with your indulgence, if you do me a favour, I'd like you to point to the zenith. The zenith is up there, right? Right? Up there. And slowly rotate around the zenith. Slowly rotate. And then slowly put it on your chin. They were right. They said half of them won't take any notice of what you say. They'll just worry about what you do and what you see. So what I'd like to do now is to go on with the unofficial history of the ASV. This is the early days. Now, in the second half of the 19th century, that's the 1800s, it was very formative. It was a formative time of Australian astronomy. The period saw the establishment of what were later to become state observatories, the emergence of the first local astronomical societies, and lots of telescope makers, and the appearance of a network of private observatories across the nation. Now, I'd briefly like to talk a little bit about one gentleman, the Melbourne-based David Ross, who was a prominent Australian astronomer at the turn of the century. Now, he was born in Scotland, where all the best astronomers obviously come from, and he was born in 1850. He migrated with his brother in 1876. His brother was charged with creating a Melbourne branch of the London Chartered Bank, which he did. We don't know much about Ross after this until about 10 years later. He followed his brother into the banking business, and he became a clerk in the Brunswick branch of the National Bank of Australasia Limited. And he remained there, working there for his entire working life, and he retired in 1915 at the Brunswick branch. And unfortunately, he died in 1930. Now, being a bachelor, he was able to stay or reside in the bank, on the bank premises. And when after work, he would construct his own telescopes and mirror making. And later he moved to Elsternwick from Brunswick, but he left all these gear and telescopes in the backyard of the bank. And after work at night, he would then creep back to the bank and do his observations. He was a pioneering telescope maker, and he was an astrophotographer. And we don't really know whether he actually made his own cameras or he got them from somewhere else. But he was a very keen astrophotographer. And he played a principal role in the short-lived history of the Victoria branch of the British Astronomical Association. Ross was Victoria's leading comet chaser, and he had 2 discoveries to his credit. He joined the London, or the British Astronomical Association, on the 28th of April 1857, and served on the inaugural committee of the Victorian branch as an ordinary committee member. Later, 1900, he became the branch secretary, and then he became the vice president from 1902, and then, unfortunately, the whole Victoria branch of the British Astronomical Association folded in 1906. Now, as a keen comet observer, he would occasionally visit the New South Wales branch of the British Astronomical Association. He would attend meetings there, and that's where he met people like Charles Murfield, which I'll come back and talk about Charles a little later on. Murfield was interested in comets, and there were other members who were also interested in telescope making and mirror making. Now, Ross regularly corresponded with Charles Murfield. Now, because of his local reputation, and in his organisational ability and his enthusiasm, Ross was able to play a major part in the early history of the Australian astronomical groups and societies. Two new members of the Victoria branch of the British Astronomical Association, he was an ideal role model. Ross was a multi-talented amateur who made good nationally and internationally through his comet discoveries and his fantastic, amazing photographs. But at the national level, Ross was not in the same league as his leading contemporaries, such as Charles Moorfield and others. Ross belonged to that second echelon, that those active, highly talented, enthusiastic amateurs who could make a notable local contribution but rarely found their way onto the staff of professional observatories. Now, after his retirement in 1915, he moved in with his brother and sister-in-law, and they were in Yarra Glen. He took all his gear and telescopes and mirror making, and he set it all up in an apple shed somewhere in Yarra Glen. And at the time of his death, he had collected together or had a personal collection of about 4,000 slides based on his own astrophotography. And unfortunately, these were all destroyed in the 1939 bushfires around that area. But anyhow, luckily we haven't got his, but we have found, the ASV have found a number of slides of our people earlier on. Now, I'd like to acknowledge Rob Brown here when his work, seminal work that he did about 10 years ago on the history, and presented it, I think, to the 90th anniversary of that. I have lent very heavily on Rod's work, and I thank him for that. Now, the British Astronomical Association came into being in 1985, and somehow it seemed to manage to attract quite a number of individual Australian members. Local branches were established. 2 years later, saw the Victoria branch of the British Astronomical Association established, as I mentioned just earlier, but only lasted 10 years. This meant that no amateur astronomical society existed in Victoria from 1906 to 1922, 16 years. In 1922, 3 Melbourne men, Rob, Messier and Edwards, took it upon themselves and took action which would ultimately lead to the formation of the Astronomical Society of Victoria. They discussed the possibility of re-establishing the past Victoria branch of the British Astronomical Association by bringing together interested people and the possibility of engaging a member of the Melbourne Observatory to provide assistance. James A. Maroney of the Melbourne Observatory volunteered. Now, about 50 people were contacted, 20 replied. A meeting was arranged to be held on the 10th of June 1922 for the purpose of forming a new Victoria branch of the Astronomical Association. Now, the Victorian Railways Institute rooms at the western end of Flinders Street Station was the venue chosen for this meeting. 14 people attended, and J.A. Maroney was voted in as chair with Messier as the secretary. Now, following initial discussions, a gentleman J. Stewart moved a motion that a local society called the Astronomical Society of Victoria be formed instead of the British Astronomical Association. Now, the motion was seconded, put to the vote, and was passed unanimously. Now, it was agreed that someone from the Melbourne Observatory be invited to become the first president of this new society. Now, a set of rules for the new society was drafted, and Charles Murfield of the Melbourne Observatory was approached about becoming the first president. Now, Charles Murfield, prior to becoming the Melbourne Observatory, had worked in Sydney in the New South Wales Public Service, but he was an enthusiastic member of the British Astronomical Association New South Wales branch. This experience stood him in good stead for leading the new Victorian society. Now, the first general meeting of the newly formed ASV at the time was held at the Athenaeum Hall in Collins Street on Thursday evening, 5th of July 1922. As the elected president, Charles Murfield first reassured those 90 persons present what the members would get for their membership fee, a princely sum of £1 guinea, or £1, 1 shilling, or $2.10. Now, this is important, he established that highly technical matters would not have an emphasis at the monthly Wednesday meetings, but rather practical and general topics in astronomy would predominate. He encouraged members to keep the society independent and to use the funds raised for the benefit of all the members. Now, 8 months later, the first annual general meeting of the Society was held on the 28th of March 1923 at the Commerce Bank Chambers in Collins Street. Now, at this meeting, Murfield reported that the membership was 61 and that several lectures had been delivered with the aid of lantern slides. And so the Society set off on its 100-year journey, which so far has brought us to the present day. The last bit. Sicatur ad astra, thus is achieved the journey to the stars. The Society's emblem and motto, Sicatur ad astra, was chosen shortly after the Society got going. The Southern Cross and pointers, surrounded by the Society's name at that time, was Southern Hemisphere Astronomers. Now, may I suggest to Chris Rudge, our current president, that maybe we should open all meetings by members present should be reciting the motto, Sicatur ad astra. It's just a thought, but you can take it as given. Well, we talked about the Society's monthly meetings. They were held in a variety of venues: Athenaeum Hall, Working Man's College, Commerce Bank Building, the Railway Institute rooms at the Flinders Street station. But I am absolutely sure that in those times they never ever met in a herbarium. Now, my limited knowledge about what goes on in a herbarium is that it's all about flowers, herbs and weeds. And I've just been reading about the dangers of smoking weed. And I'll tell you, it really did scare the crap out of me. But so after tonight, after a lot of thought, I have decided I'm giving up reading. So, what has the ASV achieved since July 1922? Look, I haven't got time to mention names, but a great many members have given freely their time and shared their wealth of expertise to make the Astronomical Society of Victoria into a world-renowned member of the astronomical community. So what's been happening? 1927 saw the first production of a newspaper called The Bulletin, and later to become Crux. The ASV Library, after a number of different locations, now in the old Government Astronomer's office, and it boasts of unbeatable range of books and electronic offerings. The sections: astrophotography, Bendigo section, club section, comet section, computing, cosmology and astrophysics, deep sky section, demonstrator section, diurnals, Great Melbourne Telescope section, historical section, instrument making, juniors, lunar and planetary media section, new astronomers group, outdoor lighting, radio astronomer, solar section, space exploration, and the ASV monthly meeting. Now the Lodge, located at Parsley, a place for meetings, both formal and informal. The growth of membership, 1922 to 1945, in the first 10 years, membership started at 63, remained about that time, both male and female. In 1935, the membership had grown to 100. A little bit later, it was 118. And at February 2022, the membership now stands at 1,700 plus. The yearbook, in 1963, the ASV began the production of the ASV yearbook.
I wasn't touching your promise.
That's the trouble with these girly men. It's Leon Mao, a dark sky site, in 1990, thanks to a generous donation from a long-standing and respected member of the LMDS site, was purchased and now hosts a wide range of activities, including general observation, astrophotography, radio observatory, camping facilities, accommodation, fun events such as the Messier Star Party, Galactic Centre Star Party and the Christmas barbecue. Communications have changed somewhat since 1922. We now have social media links, Facebooks, Instagram, Twitter, ASV YouTube channel and others. Community events, the public viewing nights, and that includes schools. We have one this month, in fact this Friday, being held at the Caulfield Racecourse. There's design and construction of a variety of telescopes and other instruments, but I'll leave that listing for another time. The All Abilities Astronomy project is a project that the ASV is surely proud, and it has been mentioned earlier. Well, this brings my part of tonight's unofficial history to a close. There will be more to celebrate when we meet again in July 2022 to commemorate 100 years of the ASV. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Very well spoken. A true gentleman. I didn't say that, somebody else told me you were. Now, as Bob said, was it 5th of July 1922, Athenaeum Theatre? And on the 5th of July 2022, we will be back at the Athenaeum Theatre. We're trying to find an appropriate speaker for that event, so keep an eye out. We do have coming up next month Professor Dwayne Hamaker, and then in June we have Professor Alan Duffy giving talks here. So keep an eye out for those. We don't have anybody for May just yet, but we've got some people in the pipeline. And we're going to have someone big, hopefully, for the 100-year meeting. But what we're going to do, if Lee's got it ready, he hasn't got it ready yet, he's trying to get it ready. We've got our tour that Lee's going to try and bring up for us. He's got to run out to the van, so he'll have to put up with me for a little bit. What I will say is there are still some tickets left for the Messier Star Party. They are going out at the rate of knots. There's, I think, close to 300 sold now. So if you're going to come...
Tell me when you're recording.
You better get one, because we are running out of tickets for that one. As Bob said, we have all these glass slides. You're more than welcome at the end of the meeting to come up and have a look at them. And the lantern projector. We did use this in an event on Monday night. It still works. It worked brilliantly down at Deeds Brewery. We had a nice boutique little setup there. We had about 20 members and non-members come along and have a 3-course meal and enjoy views through the slide projector. We are going to try and organise another event of its kind later in the year so we can see some more of these slides, because there's something like 400 glass plate slides. And a lot of our members, I know some members may have known about this, but a lot of our members, even some of our long-term members, had no idea that this existed. I had no idea that this existed. Chris, I know, had no idea it existed until we found it in the back shed at the lodge, being chewed on by mice and rats, and we thought, this doesn't belong here, we better bring it out, and we better do something with it for the 100th year anniversary. Now, Lee, how are we going? Oh, okay, well... I'm watching the screen now. So we've got a tour that we recorded earlier with Alex, who's in the crowd tonight, where we did a
Welcome
bit of
to the
walking tour
ASV
of
library
Melbourne Observatory.
at the Melbourne Observatory. We're here with Alex Progodich. I got it right. Yep. Alex is a tour guide at Melbourne Observatory, and he's going to guide us around the observatory and talk to us about all of the buildings and what their roles are with the observatory. Alex, take it away.
Okay, well, we're still in here. This is in fact the first government astronomer's office, and that's his desk over there.
In 1863.
That fellow is not the government astronomer, that is our librarian. Now this is now the ASV library as we see it. We might move outside and I will show you the building from outside. Okay.
He is old enough to be the governor, though.
You would be,
yeah.
Yes indeed.
There you are, look.
I'll go a bit later, Barry. Come with us. We're on our way outside.
You gotta,
and we come over here and turn around.
yeah, turn around. Okay. Now this is the first building. The observatory building.
Yep.
And the office that we're in, as we said, that's the first government astronomer's office, Robert Ellery. And over here on the right we have got, and over there we've got the meteorological rooms at the top, and also a zenith sector room, which is where a telescope can look basically up at a certain section of the sky. Now if you just pan around this way, we'll move around to the back of the building here.
So where are we going now?
Just going to the back of this main building here. And we can see where the original telescope was, and that was the telescope that came out of Williamstown. In fact, the first observatory was not in Melbourne, it was in Williamstown. So the telescope was in that dome. It's not there at the moment, but that was the dome where the 4.5-inch refractor came from Williamstown. Now you might just come over here. There's not a lot to see, but
we'll give it a go. We're going to go and have a look at the zenith, are we?
Yeah. No, there's nothing in there.
No, but the slit's still there, isn't it? In the building? No?
No, it's also.
Oh.
This slit, however, you can just go through there. You just see through the bushes. There is a slit there, and that's the window for the transit. That's the window for the transit room, where the transit telescope from Williamstown came from, and that's actually one side of it. Now, at the moment, there's nothing in there. Okay. Now, what we'll do is we'll come back to that a little bit later, the transit room, when we go around to the other side.
So we'll
move over to the Gmt House. So if we wander over to the car park here.
So with the GMT House, it's obviously where the Great Melbourne Telescope used to reside.
Indeed.
Yep.
That was where the the house was built around the telescope.
Yep.
The telescope was actually bought in 1869 and it was built by Thomas Grub in Dublin and was brought out here and in fact erected in the spot right there. Now the actual house had to be built around it. The house itself has a roll-off roof. You can see the roof of it and you can actually see the...
You can see the beams.
Yep,
Yeah.
you can see the beams where it runs on, but also what look like little dormer windows are actually the wheels.
Oh, okay.
And so the whole roof slides back to reveal the telescope.
Now, has that been restored recently?
It has indeed, and it's actually now functioning.
Yep.
And it has been tested prior to COVID, I think it was 2 Christmases ago. It's actually electrified now, you can actually move it back.
Ah, okay.
Right, and it's been restored. Now if you just pan back over to the actual chimney there, you can see the chimney. That used to house the boiler room to operate the steam engine to actually polish the mirrors.
Oh, okay.
So the actual telescope, the Grub Telescope, was a 48-inch Cassegrain and it had metal, speculum metal mirrors.
Okay.
They needed to be polished all the time, so they had to have 2 of them. So polishing one, then use it and polish the other one. So in fact that was where the steam engine was and they would need to polish it continually. You can see they are actually going to restore the whole building back
It's
to
good to
its,
see.
and the GMT, hopefully, which is now actually at the Science Works Museum at the moment,
Yep.
not complete yet, will actually return home to its site.
Oh, that's wonderful news.
Yes, it is.
So
Now,
where to from here? What have we got left to look at?
We might wander over to the 8-inch telescope.
So the 8-inch as in...
That is a refractor.
Yep.
That's the only telescope that was still here after the observatory was closed in 1945.
Ah,
So that stayed here all the time. All the other telescopes were in fact sold off.
so I know the GMT went up to Canberra.
Indeed, went up to Canberra.
Do we know where the other ones went? And are they still around?
Yeah, the photoheliograph was actually sold, and as part of the sale they were allowed to leave it there till about 1963. After 1963 it had to be moved, and in fact one of our members actually has bought it and restored it and brought it back.
Oh, so
in
we have it back
time
now.
for the 2004 transit of Venus.
I've seen
at the moment
photos
it's
of that
not
as
in there.
well. So
Sorry?
I've seen photos of those.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Now it's not actually in there at the moment because these domes, as you can see, have been restored, and it would normally be in there, and it was removed from there, but eventually it will come back in there. So that first dome you see is actually the photoheliograph house, and that's where the photoheliograph is.
Can we go for a wander inside?
Yeah, we're going to go inside. Hopefully there's enough light in here for you. I might just open the blind, give you a little bit more light. Okay. We'll open the room up. As I said, the photoheliograph normally lives in this room. And was removed for safekeeping while they did the restoration work.
Now hopefully it's bright enough in here. Is it bright enough in here?
Not quite at the moment.
Not bright enough?
No, that's okay.
Knew I should have brought the light.
Okay. Well, we won't bother about that because the actual telescope's not here anyway. So
Beautiful to see though. I'm glad it's been restored.
It has been, yes.
Oh, yeah.
How does that help? Are we good now?
Not much.
Not much.
No, anyway, it doesn't really matter.
We'll move on to the next one because there's no telescope here.
Now we'll head up the stairs, and while we're heading up the stairs, you might just have a quick look with your camera at the mechanism, which is the governor that controls the speed, which is actually a falling weight drive, and that controls the speed of the rotation of this telescope. Okay, we'll head up the stairs now.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
And this is the 8-inch refractor telescope. As I said, both telescopes were actually set up here in 1874 for the transit of Venus at the same time. So both buildings were made in the transit of Venus for both telescopes. Now, this is a refractor. The lens on it is what we call a doublet lens, one of the first doublet lenses that prevents any sort of chromatic aberration occurring when you're looking at the images.
Don't know if that helps.
No, it doesn't.
No, doesn't help, but that's okay.
Okay. We could actually, I think we can actually, if you want more light.
Yeah, if we can. Oh, look at this. We're going to open the roof.
Okay, if I can remember how to do it. It's been 2 years.
Been 2 years.
That's the way. The rope's actually a bit twisted, so the opportunity is to get it back again.
Oh, that's a lot more light.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Wow, look at that.
So this is a Equatorial Mount. This is your polar axis, and this is measures the right section of the hour angle, and that's how we actually adjust the position of the telescope in its position in the sky. Yes, this is the actual drive. Now, if I wind it up and get it going, I can actually probably, I think it has been wound up, so if I actually turn that on, you should be able to see the mechanism. It's been a while, so maybe I'll actually... No, there she goes, she's starting to move.
Oh yes, I can see that moving now, yeah.
So if we want to track the object in the night sky, we'll have that on. Of course, we would lock it in position. At the moment, it's virtually unlocked, so I lied about that. It should have been unlocked. Let's store it away. But okay, that's unlocked position. But when it's locked in position and you've got the object that you want in that, you basically just leave that in that position, and that will track it through the sky. You also have the other adjustment, which is your declination, which is the angle up and the angle down from the equator. So if it's up, it's what we call positive, or in the north. If it's down, it's in the south.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, we might move on to the next one. Okay, I will close that.
Yep, close that up.
Just before you lock the mechanism off,
Yep.
I'll
Yeah,
just
head on down.
I'll see if you can see it turning here.
Isn't that amazing technology? Love it.
Okay.
Don't make them like that anymore.
Oh, he's turned it off.
He's turned it off on us. All right, we're going to head over to, where are we going now, Alex? We're going to the
We will head over to the magnet house.
Magnet House. We're going to go over to the Magnet House now. So, which is this building over here. This is the Magnet House.
Now that building, called the Magnet House, and was built in 1877. Not the first magnet house here. There was actually an absolute magnet house over there where they're doing the Shakespeare at the moment. And there's an area for the absolute magnet house there. This is the second one that was built. Could even be the third one. 1877. And in there was housed, apart from magnetometers, also measurements of temperature, pressure, and a seismograph for measuring, earthquakes and earth tremors and various things like that. Most of that was done in the basement. Now,
I think I've been in there once.
yes,
Once, yeah.
we used to have our presentations and that in there at one stage. Now, that house was used until about 1913, and the reason why it couldn't be used was that they actually electrified the trams
Okay,
in St
yep.
Kilda Road. That would upset all the magnetic measurements. So the next transit house, which probably was built and completed, I'm not sure when, was in Talangi State Forest.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Long way
far away from
everything.
any trams.
Yes.
Hopefully no trams will go out that way.
Now we're going to finish on the most impressive
Indeed.
part of the Melbourne Observatory.
But before we finish on that, just while we're here,
Oh, yes.
right on this particular line, you see these tiles here, and you see that window there? That is a new, over there in that direction, that's the new transit house, or eastern transit house. That was built because the Earth, the geology was not very stable. So they ended up having to have a special transit telescope built, in which case they could make adjustments. And there's an obelisk at the end there where there was a marker there. If that tree wasn't there, the marker's not there anymore, but there's a plaque to say that's where it was. And this is the meridian line for the Melbourne Observatory. Okay, now we will go to the last one, which is this very impressive looking dome over here. This one's called the Astrograph House.
And it doesn't sell ice cream.
It's a big ice cream.
It doesn't sell ice
Doesn't
cream
sell
at
ice
the
cream.
moment.
That's
It's
a
a bit
misnomer, that
disappointing
one,
because I wanted one this afternoon.
I could do with an ice cream at the moment as well.
False advertising.
Misleading the public, is that it?
Something like that.
So what telescope is inside this building?
This is actually the Astronomical Society Victoria Telescope.
So this is our telescope in
Our
here.
telescope in here. The original telescope was in fact the Astrograph, and we won't be able to see that. The only way you can see that at the moment is to go to the Sydney Observatory, and it's actually been restored and it's in a glass box.
But we can't get it back. Greedy buggers, they want everything, don't they?
Well, hopefully we could get back, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Technical difficulties of the key not wanting to work at the moment.
It's okay, the wind's
We've got it, we've got
It's
it.
been
Now,
a few
the wind's
years
playing
since
up
it's
on the
been...
audio anyway.
That's all right.
In here. Okay.
I'll hold that open for a moment.
If we just use that wedge over there. Actually, if we will actually come around, no, we'll go upstairs first. We'll look at the telescope that we have, and then I'll talk about the telescope that was here. Okay, so we'll head up the stairs. This is the floor level of the actual, where the original telescope was. This has been built specifically, this platform, to house our telescope.
Did we disable the alarm?
Disable the alarm. Russell's doing
Yes,
it for us.
yes. No, that's all right. So we head up here.
Apologies for the alarm sound, everyone.
And in fact, this is our telescope. This was in fact installed in here. I haven't actually remember the exact date, but about 1936 vintage. This is Jeffrey, the maker of the telescope in Bendigo.
Yep.
And this was actually originally had its own house, but eventually put in this position here. We were allowed to put it in this.
So when was it put here?
That's a good question. I'm not that good with dates. I can check my notes.
A long time. We'll go with a long time ago.
Oh, not that long ago in terms of the history, but around about 1950 or something like that, maybe even earlier. 1936 is the vintage of the actual telescope. The reason why I did science was because I'm no good with dates. I'd have to check with other people about that.
So this is the one we're going to have running tonight.
We'll be running tonight, and we'll be looking at the moon. We'll also have the other one running as well.
Okay, we're both going.
We'll have both going tonight. We'll be able to look at.
For those of you at home, suffer. We don't get to look through it this time. But we are going to try and get these open for people again, aren't we?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
keep an eye out because
Yes.
we're trying to bring back the public viewing nights at the observatory.
Yes, the public viewing night will be coming back. Also, we have the event which is on the 7th.
9th, on the 9th of April, but it's sold out.
Yeah,
sold out very quickly. So
unfortunately.
yes.
Yes, but we will be trying to run public viewing nights.
Yeah, that is the long-term goal.
Yes, that's the long-term goal. Now, the actual telescope that was in here was called the Astrograph, and you might come over here. There's a photo of it on the board here, the Melbourne Astrograph. and you can see the size of it, and you can see where the windows are. There's a window there, those are the windows down there on the actual, on the board there. So you can see this platform is meant for this particular telescope. Now, that's actually a camera, that's why it's called the Astrograph, and the actual camera is the larger telescope,
Okay.
13 inch.
Yep.
The actual finder scope, or the one that you look through, is a 10 inch.
That's quite a big.
That's a very large camera.
That
Now,
finder scope's bigger than my telescope.
yeah. How are we going for time? Are we
I think we're almost finished.
almost
Yeah.
finished? So what we'll do is, it was there to take photographs of the night sky for the Carte de Ciel project. So we'll go
Yep.
down the stairs.
Oh, there's
and
some
I'll quickly-
astrophotographers that use the Carte de Ciel program. Yes. They refer to it.
And we'll have a look at the, they had so many photographic plates, they had to have computers to actually go through and analyse all the plates. So if we go around to the room, go to the side, you can actually see one of the computers. And when I take the public through here, they all say, well, there it is, that's the computer. No, that's not the computer. That's actually, she's the actual computer there. The young women were employed to actually analyse the photographs.
That's just the viewing piece.
That's the viewing piece. This one's actually not functioning, although we'd like to get it going, but that's actually what she's looking at there, looking at the glass plates and viewing them and measuring to quite high precision the actual positions of all the stars. Now, Melbourne and Sydney were in fact part of the greater Carte de Ciel project, worldwide project, and Melbourne had the job of analysing all the plates.
So Sydney would take the images.
And Melbourne.
And Melbourne. Okay.
Yeah, Melbourne had up to, from the south celestial pole to about 52 degrees, and there was an overlap from about 50 odd degrees up to 60 something for Sydney to do.
And then they would send their plates.
Yeah,
down.
all the plates would come here. Initially we had about 6 young women employed here. Eventually there were 11, and one or two of them ended up with in professional positions. So in fact they were the first women working in the public service of the Victorian government. And they weren't allowed to be married, so some of them didn't bother to tell. They
So some of them were married but didn't say anything.
didn't say anything yet.
Don't blame them.
So anyway, there's a statement there, Robert Ellery, young women of ordinary intelligence can be quickly trained in the use of the micrometer and do measurements quickly and well. Well, that's probably the best you could do as a compliment in those days, but the women turned out to be extremely good at the job.
So extremely intelligent, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's a timely way to end because it was International Women's Day yesterday as well.
It was
So,
indeed, yes,
so
yes, indeed.
we thank them for their service, and we
Yeah.
thank you for giving us a tour of the Melbourne Observatory. And we thank everybody who's watching this, and we apologise for the sound every now and then. There was some issues because of wind, but we hope you enjoyed the tour of Melbourne Observatory.
Thank you.
Ooh, yes. Oh no, I don't. I can get you a spoon if you want.
Melbourne Observatory is world known. It's tied up with astronomy and Australian astronomy in a very strong way. It's part of the ASV
back now.
Melbourne Observatory and want to call it the Observatory at Melbourne Gardens.
I won't get into any political arguments, but I'm not entirely aware of that. The Botanic Gardens manage actually have to managed it since they were handed the responsibility of the gardens, and I actually see this latest move as actually being a situation where we can actually resume, if you like, inverted commas, ownership of the ASV. That's
Hang on. Oop. Hang on, Russell. I'll pass you the mic. Here you go.
Could I also add that whilst the Melbourne Observatory is under the management of the Royal Botanic Gardens, the Melbourne Observatory Place is on the National Heritage List, so that anything that the Melbourne Gardens intend to do on that place must be approved by National Heritage of Australia, the Heritage Council of Victoria, and Heritage Victoria itself. So basically, the Royal Botanic Gardens are bound to maintain the heritage of the place, and they do not have free rein to do whatever they like to that place. Now, we are aware of the Melbourne Gardens 20-year plan, which, if it came to its fruition, it would absolutely destroy the heritage of Melbourne Observatory. But there's no way that the Melbourne Gardens could actually do that, because, well, it would destroy a potentially a World Heritage place. So I think, and really there's no need to fingers crossed, there are these legislated organisations or departments that are looking after the place. So we need to be mindful of what the Royal Botanic Gardens are trying to do, and we are aware of what they are trying to do, but we have at least the National Heritage and Heritage Victoria looking after the place.
Good question and great answer as well. Lee, you have to turn the camera back to me now. All right, so thank you everybody for coming along tonight. Let me get where are my notes? Here we go. Yes. Just want to remind you, raffle tickets to, I'm going to make Lee work again. This is it. It's got my name on it, but it's not mine. This is the raffle prize that we have at the moment. It's real, it's actual. It's going home with Gavin, and he promises me he'll bring it up to the star party. And he's saying no now, but he promises me he will. No, you won't. It is a 200mm telescope. It's got a HEQ5 mount. It's got eyepieces. It is astrophotography ready, but visual observing ready as well. So it's worth, I think, around about $3,500. So I think tickets are $5 a ticket. So even if you bought 10 tickets, you got a chance of winning that prize. And all the money we're raising for this raffle is going to the next ASV project, which is remote observatories, so that we can access the telescopes remotely to do not just astrophotography, but science as well. And so you don't need to therefore go to the dark sky site, or if you can't get to the dark sky site, you can do science remotely through ASV telescopes. Be drawn, as I said, on the Messier Star Party on the 26th of March. And also this Friday, as Bob Rip said, we've got our viewing night at Caulfield. I think there's only 4 tickets left, so we have 246 people booked to come to the first viewing night at Caulfield Racecourse. And I think it's meant to be pretty cloudy, except for the fact there's a clear patch, a perfectly good clear patch between 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock on Friday night. So we may luck out, which will be really good. But yes, thank you very much for coming along to the Astro Talk. We hope you enjoyed this evening's presentations, because there were a few of them. And if you're not a member and you're interested in becoming a member, asv.org.au/join. And if you don't like us on Facebook, please do. And if you don't like us yet on YouTube, click the button, ring the bell, all of the fun usual stuff. And that will bring us to a close. That'll bring us to a close for the live stream. And we'll...